Okay, I think we can get down to business.
Yes.
Um, Before we uh, dive right into the nitty-gritties of the film, I think we can go around sharing our thoughts on the film and expanding on that uh, as the discussion progresses. So, um, Kritik, would you like to start with the uh, initial reactions?
Give me 1 minute. I'll come back online. Sorry.
Sure. In the meanwhile, Gaurav, would you like to go ahead?
Yes. Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Nikhil.
no. Yeah.
So I just happened to see this film 2 hours ago
Mm-hmm.
because it was an unexpected experience for me. In fact, I like to see some oldies also. So, but yeah, the ending was not like expected.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of blew me off, and it was very beautifully portrayed, the story of these two children, and they wanted to purchase this horse thing. It got me really intrigued, but
Mm-hmm.
how the whole story got framed, they got into prison and everything, I think it was very compelling for me as a like and there was this particular thing that I really enjoyed was the belt scene, na? Remember
Yeah.
how they
Yeah.
hello
The
yeah
interrogation. Yes.
yeah, the bluff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the bluff thing, and yeah, I think it was a transitional phase now where they were good friends and they happened to become enemy.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
the transitional phase. Yes.
yeah.
I
So
mean,
I
the part after the interrogation was the transitional phase. Yes.
yes, exactly. I kind of felt sympathy for that also. Yeah, everything was beautifully portrayed. It kind of reminded me you remember Salam Bombay, that prison scene and everything.
True.
Yeah, the escape thing and everything. So yeah,
True.
beautifully portrayed, beautifully. I enjoyed the film very much.
True. Vittorio De Sica was a huge influence. I mean, he was one of the pioneers of the neorealist movement in Italy, and additionally, he was a huge influence on a lot of Indian filmmakers, including Satyajit Ray.
Indeed. As well as his film Bicycle Thieves has inspired so many directors.
Absolutely. So I'm happy that you enjoyed the film. So Preet, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
This film actually reminded me of a chapter we had in school and in NCRT.
Could you be a bit louder? Your
Am I
voice is
audible?
hello.
Am I audible?
Yeah, much better.
Yeah. This chapter reminded me of a chapter I had in school.
Mm-hmm.
We still have it actually. It's called Two Gentlemen Below Now. It's in
Mm-hmm.
class 10th,
Mm-hmm.
CBSE.
Okay.
And that actually reminds me of same. It's about the same storyline. It's a
Mm-hmm.
fictional story, I think by AJ Cronin. Uh, it's about two boys and how they managed to help their elder sister who's suffering
Mm-hmm.
tuberculosis or something
Mm-hmm.
post-poetry.
Mm-hmm.
This the story remind me of that. This film
What class you? I studied in CBSE as well. So, what class?
actually in class 10. I just checked it right now.
Class.
It's still in class 10. It's in class
Okay.
10 portions.
Okay.
It's like the first chapter we have it in there.
Okay. I'm trying to jog my memory, but I can't seem to place it anywhere. Yeah. But
Well,
go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, it's fine. Let's check it out. It should be in Google or something.
Sure.
And, that thing about like it was like everyone has survived for themselves. Everyone is like fighting for their own survival.
Mm-hmm.
You may be great friends today, but no, it pans out. Like seeing how the friendship goes, how they go from extremely dear friends to even how can I say it, enemies to that level. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's an interesting concept.
True.
And I'm not sure is it White Horse the reference to something? Reference to some Greek mythology or something?
I feel it be a reference. White horses are usually associated in some sense to aristocracy or nobility, and I'm supposing it is the case for the most part, but
I thought something related
I
Greek.
couldn't place it anywhere either. It's probably because of my lack of
I think
association.
I think I remember that story.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
Okay, are you talking about the same story now, where the tribe is known for their honesty and loyalty and everything?
We had essays, chapters, and notes, and all that. Yeah, the same one.
Same one, na? And this two boys they open to
Yeah,
steal
they
a
killed their sister or something.
steal a horse, right.
Yeah, the same story. That's what I think. Though there was references to death and everything.
Mm-hmm.
The funeral and no, the fortune teller's cards at first when what was it? Giuseppe or Giuseppe? How do you pronounce that name?
Giuseppe.
Giuseppe. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Giuseppe. No, and tumbles it over.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was somehow like a Easter egg to the entire plot. Now that I
Mm-hmm.
think of it, and that's it. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. That's a very interesting take. Um, Kritik, if you're back, you can probably um, share your initial reaction. I think there's poor internet from your end. So, Kaiwale, would you like to go?
So,
And Happy New Year.
yeah, you cannot hear me?
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, this movie was like, uh, how a small child, innocent child is seduced or corrupted easily. It was
Mm-hmm.
basically about that, in my opinion, how
Mm-hmm.
easily it corrupts and how, a small misunderstanding because of, lack of complete knowledge or, coming up front. Oh, I did a mistake. I should same. I should not probably wait. So this thing, how it can cause a huge rift, which could be in a way not mendable, is what this movie is about, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that is actually very true. Like, I think every one of us might have had a relationship which was soured because we thought that, if I would say this, then isko bura lagega. He would not, he wouldn't mind it. So, let's not say it right now. And then someone else says him, thinking that, oh, these two are so close, they must have already talked it about, and he's just pranking, and because of that the whole relationship is out because you were not upfront about it. So I think that was very relatable in kind of way. So I actually could relate it with a lot of personal experiences that I myself have had, and then a lot of my friends have also had. I mean, I've literally seen good friendship souring over something as stupid as that, oh, you use this thing and you told that this is mine. Why, you should have at least kept me in the loop. I didn't knew, and because of that now I have a bad impression. You spoiled my reputation, stuff like that. And this is like very petty things, but this petty things, they have such an everlasting effect. And here it was such a huge deal that because of his confession his brother is going in jail. So he should have been upfront about it, but then again he thought that, he probably would never get to know. Why should I, do this thing? And it led to such a tragic end. So yeah, I guess honesty is the best policy, I guess.
That's a very interesting take on the entirety of the film and a nice moral, as a conclusion. So, Varun, would you like to uh, go ahead?
Hey, hi.
Happy New
Very happy New Year to everyone. So that was one of the one beautiful film I've seen. So I don't know. I don't have any thoughts as of now. So as in when we keep on discussing, we can talk more about it. So yeah.
Okay. So, fellow Jitsi, I think you're the only one left. Would you like to introduce yourself and share your thoughts on the film? Okay. Um, so the film seemed like a very quintessential Italian neorealist film, and we can probably expand on the characteristics and probably, if time permits, a little bit of history as well about it, the neorealism movement and its possible influences and what we can note and things we can notice from uh, the influence of the movement. But before we do that, um, it came to my notice once I watched the film that this is a pretty complex film considering De Sica's other films. And I think most of you are already familiar with Bicycle Thieves. I think since there are just six of us, you can, uh, most of us can be on unmute unless there is background disturbance from your end. It's mostly from my end, so there's not much that I can do. The window is shut as well. So speaking of the complexity of the film, it seemed to speak a lot about a lot of things. So it spoke about troubled families, it spoke about delinquency, it spoke about tendency to fall back into the criminal pathway, and it spoke about life in prison, it spoke about social dynamics of pre-teenagers, and if I'm missing something out, I think you guys can fill me in on that as well. But it did not really cover molestation, but I think that was in some sense not necessary. But if it was trying to paint a picture of prison life for children, it would have been an appropriate weaving into the narrative. So it's actually interesting how everything is projected or reflected mostly from these kids. So I want to know how what other characteristics and what you guys noticed which were essentially projected from these kids, and I mean things that I might have missed out. So would anybody like to go ahead and comment on that?
Do you mind repeating what you asked?
Sorry?
Do you mind clarifying more about what?
I'm sorry?
Hello.
Sorry, yeah. So it spoke about a lot of, it had a lot of moving levers, a lot of uh, complexity, and the writing had, stitched in a lot of social issues into, uh, these characters, and most of the problems were projected or reflected from these children. I mean, if they had a problem at home, or if they had a troubled family, it was mostly projected from what was the consequences these children had go through. So I wanted to hear your comments on this style of writing. You don't really have the environment set out for you, but you have a couple of characters, you have a handful of characters, and expositionally you are led to understand the history of what the characters have been through, and what they might be going through, and their future in the film. I'm sorry, do I have to make it more concise? Will that be helpful?
No, thanks. Can I answer?
Yeah, please go ahead. I mean, I want to hear your comment because this is a very unique, and given the time, it was very rare as well. I mean, the screenwriting and the direction. So I wanted to, in some sense, uh, have a conversation on that as well.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the main thing which we can infer from this is the Easter eggs kind of thing. The small,
Hmm.
say these characters such as fortune tellers cards or
Hmm.
horse, or like no the color of the horse and all other
Hmm.
things which help us decide in case no make a paint idea in our head.
Hmm.
Say you have white horse, it, sometimes it means
Hmm.
purity and honesty,
Hmm.
and like how both the friends are pure and honest, and
Hmm.
they are easy to be they're easy, they're malleable. more or
Mhm.
less. And for example, the fortune teller's cards. She has a lot of customers. She has a lot of clients. Even the
Mhm.
chief's wife is her client.
Mhm.
So that is something like she has a lot of connection, the power of influence.
Mhm.
She believes the fortune teller believes that just because she is the wife, she knows the wife of a police officer, she'll
Mhm.
escape.
True.
So that's an interesting idea. I mean, like it shows a much more deeper thought, much more deeper concept than just no.
Mhm.
I can see a film twice or thrice, and I still find new things. I mean, it's the first time, but still, to see it
Mhm.
one more time again, I find some more new and newer things.
What I really found interesting was most of the characters were not really I mean, in some sense, fundamentally important, except for the protagonist and except for the protagonist. So anything, this is purely, trying to look at the film from a foundation perspective. So, especially with the writing, you had De Sica essentially use these characters, the fortune teller, the inspector, the fellow delinquents, sorry, be an environment for them. They don't really have to be there, but it just adds to the effect. But even if you don't have them, in some sense, you are getting the point across because much of the story and much of the consequences and much of the uh, 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 you know uh, much of what is happening to them is essentially portrayed and projected and reflected from these two protagonists. They ruin the friendship. They get back again. They and one of them kills. Giuseppe is killed.
Hmm.
I think it was more necessary for the, to let what exactly was happening to let people know. Like for example, the tarot
True,
card
true, true,
reader.
true.
Why do you
Absolutely.
why is that the tarot card reader is so popular? In a way, she is so popular that she can afford buying smuggled goods, right?
Hmm.
So why is she so popular? Because they just went through a war, and because of that, now people are looking at all the aspects. They say when you are in suffering, you go towards God, but when you're happy, you forget God, right? When you're in suffering, you look towards anything, any ray of hope. So that is why the tarot card was something like that. That the society is in such despair that even something like tarot card, which has no science associated with it, right? People
Hmm.
are still going towards it. People are still moving towards it. I think that way. I mean, this is just tarot card, right? Then there was the warden. The warden, there is a statement, right? Oh, you bring two more people to look after me. Like, oh, very good. So it was like that how the justice system is very very, and this is by the way true for India also, if I'm correct. I mean, I know about this under trial things happen, but I'm not sure about the juvenile system. But as far as the the normal for adults, there is a very good movie with I am forgetting the name of that actor, on this thing only, that it's under trial, but they are still in the prison, or they
Hmm.
are waiting for their trial date, right?
Hmm.
So that is something which is true. So it was again a social commentary on how exactly how bad it is, right? And
Hmm.
this thing, how even in those times the kids who are boot polishers, they are trying their level best to get a horse, despite of knowing that they have no freaking idea where they would store the horse, how they will manage to feed the horse, and they are willing to even sleep in the stable, but they do not want to give up on their aspiration, because that is the only thing that's probably keeping them alive. At least that is true for at least the orphan kid, right? I mean, the other kid at least has his family, but the orphan kid literally has no one except that one aspiration and maybe his friendship. So I think there are a lot of things like that, but then again, it would take a very deep dive, because I honestly feel that a writer would not put unnecessary material in his story. If
I didn't, I didn't
especially
see the
back in
scripts.
those days when
Hmm.
more actors means more chances of fumble, and it was probably shoot on the film. The film were very expensive, so actors, I mean the writers and the screenplay writers would actively try to keep as limited people in the frame as possible to avoid
Hmm.
the shortage of food. So I think that is why one of the reason. I think there must be some sort of justification for almost each and every character in it.
And
That's just my
I'll,
opinion. Obviously, I can be wrong.
yeah. And don't mind if I add something.
yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, like even if our teams and everything is well and good, but
Hmm.
like say I'm first time watching film 1946 or
Hmm.
47. I
Hmm.
don't know, in Italy or in France or
47.
anywhere in the world. Okay, if I watch the first time, these small things, talent cars or the horse, for example,
Hmm.
you just say it at the end of the film, aha, oh, that's what it was for, or aha, like no, this happened or something like that. Like you be surprised, but you know that it is going to happen. Like, you should have guessed it. Mm. Like it's right in front of you. It's like he's giving you
Hmm.
clues for it to find out. So you're both going on with the storyline and also going on with the team line. So like at the end you can just say, aha, I knew it would happen. Something
Hmm.
like
Could you elaborate on what you mean by the team line?
uh say you have the storyline. The storyline is no, you just look at it simple. But the theme, for example, uh, friendship, honesty, or even war, for example. What
Hmm.
happens post war and how people survive post war.
Hmm.
You can see the people would expect to see some sort of brave gallantry or some knight in shining armor kind of honesty in the film.
Hmm.
But no, but you don't get any of that. You just get what will happen in the film and what happens at the end of the film. And that is proven. Like you don't from the small lines by which for example, the jailer or was it a doctor? Say you have one more person to feed, or like
Hmm.
the one with the bandages guy. The doctor said 80% bandages.
Hmm.
So and then you have that the attender, the assistant
Hmm.
attender who's saying all kids should get some food or something like that. No, those are like small things which help you connect with the audience. Then they're not just for us cinema. They're not for us for say after 50
Hmm.
years. Let's say this was a theme happened. As a
Hmm.
person sitting in the theater 1947, 1948,
Hmm.
it's like you're showing to audience, you're connecting to the audience, and that's important. A film won't run just because just say there's some great themes in the background.
That's true.
It runs because people are connected to a film.
That's true. That's
That's
true.
it.
That's fair. Before we proceed, I want to make a tiny correction to my previous comments. So I didn't really mean that the characters were unnecessary, but rather they were used as props to set an environment. So I mean, it has been the case with a lot of films, but it was pretty interesting for 1946 and an advent of the neorealist movement for characters to not provide anything other than being an environment or the uh, 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 the projection of the environment they are living in. For example, the tarot card reader was from an affluent family and she didn't really have to worry much, and that in some sense uh, shined a light on how the social dynamics is. And given Vittorio De Sica is actually a communist, I would be surprised that he has a strong social class-based commentary on post-war Italy. So, since the aspect of relatives were brought up and also how there's the aspect of the class dynamics here. Relationships are usually the first casualties of poverty or war. It's been mostly the case with all the films that we have seen so far. I mean, the films concerning war or post-war environments. I feel we can probably can dip our toes in the characteristics of neorealism and try to look at the characteristics that were that we can extract from film. So one of the aspect is the movement mostly focused on contemporary stories, and these stories were mostly of middle class and the poor class struggling to make a living in Italy post-war II. Likewise, uh, if try to jog your memory and try to think of elements that were pretty unique to, uh, I mean, that could be unique to the film movement. It could be a interesting activity whilst we speak. Garo or Supreet or Kaya, or Varun, would you like to?
There is one small thing which I noticed at the beginning of where there's this small girl, right, friend of Giuseppe's. So
Mhm.
when she wanted to enter, when she was in talking to Giuseppe about going to some place, and Giuseppe actually tells her that no, women are not actually allowed there. So I think it was one small, tiny take on the gender inequality or the gender stereotype during those times uh,
Interesting.
in Italy. So that caught my eye at the beginning of the film. So
Interesting. Supreet, Garo, Kaivalya, would you like to share uh, particular elements that you feel might be a part of the movement? Because
Yes.
be something that you can come to notice in other film movements as well, because they usually follow a certain set of characteristics which qualify them to be part of that movement. So go ahead.
Uh, I think I know one. In the prison, in the Julian
Could you
prison.
speak louder? Your voice is a bit. Volume too.
Yeah, I'm audible.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the Julian prison, you have one of the friends of what's his name? The elder kid.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot his name. Okay, yeah, one of the friends who wears the spectacles and all that.
Okay.
Maggie, Pascalia,
Yeah,
I can't pronounce it properly, but it's Maggie, I guess.
Pascali and Maggie Giuseppe are the protagonists, the primary friends.
yeah. But Maggie has four friends and the four people who stay with him in prison. One
Mm-hmm.
of them has a specs and is seen reading a book,
Mm-hmm.
some sort of a book. His side of the wall is covered with writings. I think they're Italian or Latin. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
And he keeps on making references to some cinematic lines, such as the first you see him making reference to some some the way he introduces himself, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Those are like they're trying to it's almost they can reference to something.
Mm-hmm.
They're referring to something larger.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I saw. Something caught my eye. And even when one of them was singing, the other was dancing in the hall when Giuseppe and Maggie come to fight.
Okay.
That also like the it's not exactly Italian song per se. It's more of a like operatic, something of a higher class. No, I know. Like, it's a kind of music. Like if you can notice it, that's what I saw.
Mm, so you're talking about the,
I mean,
you know,
I'm talking about little things such as the writing on the wall or the music in
mhm,
which they the music which
mhm,
they sang.
mhm,
They're not the ones which we can see, which we would see in Italy or anywhere these days. They're more of prison songs. They're
mhm.
more like a song which are sung by people who have a common interest, like inside joke.
True. Absolutely. So, based on what you said, it actually that is one of the characteristics of Italian neorealism. So you have the uh, films shot on those particular locations, and most of these locations were pretty easy to access because they were pretty damaged from the war, and they were pretty cheap as well, and you didn't really have to pay a lot of money as rent because there was hyperinflation back then. So what do you see, the prison, the streets, and the houses, and whatnot, the shops, and the city as well as a whole? It's essentially how it was right after the war, and this was shot in 1946. It was just a few years after Mussolini relaxed the film restrictions that he had placed much earlier during the peak of the war. So what you're seeing right now is essentially history, which is sort of interesting to think about.
Indeed, I'd like to interrupt. Indeed, in fact, the scene in the film where the projector is placed and the World War clips are shown,
Hmm.
that says a lot actually.
True, true.
And I would like to say to I would like to add to what Kritik said in the starting.
Hmm.
As the two guys enters the prison, no, there's someone who is speaking them, the police guard. Okay, and so there's this comment, the statement that is uttered. Okay, I'm kind of paraphrasing it. Okay, it says something like the juvenile prison is already oversized. That shows
Hmm.
how it is. Means they are supposed to be adjusting those two kids.
Hmm.
They are not having a sufficient place for the juvenile prison. That is why they are kind of putting five kids in a cabin or what you say cell, right? So that says
True.
a lot about society and everything. That incapability of as well as the thing kid with the lung disease,
Hmm.
hiccups, right, all the time. That also shows the inability of the infirmary of the hospital. I mean of the
True.
prison.
Lack of empathy.
Yes, 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 yes.
Um, Additionally, I mean, this is a tangential point, but we had a film that was based in it was the ending of war in Italy. I mean, it started out in the war timeline, and it sort of ended. The film sort of ended with the war. It was Malena by Giuseppe Tornatore, and I think some of you might be familiar with the film. Not wrong. Sorry,
Which film are you referring to?
Malena. Malena by Giuseppe Tornatore.
Malena with Monica
2003 or
Bellucci.
2004 film. Sorry,
Malena with Monica Bellucci in it. Is that?
Yeah, Monica Bellucci.
Yes, yes, I've seen that film, right?
Yeah, so you can see the strong similarities with Shoeshine and Malena as well.
What
But
similarity? What similarity are
mostly
there?
the environmental and the
Oh,
consequential similarities, not the style similarities, because they're very different directors.
exactly, exactly.
So there's also something very peculiar about the acting. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, what was the question? Peculiar acting?
Yeah, the acting was pretty peculiar. If you probably compare it to a film of probably 1970s or 1980s or 1990s or the 2000s,
Hmm.
you see the actors quite different from the actors in our recent times. For example, if you compare, if you use the same comparison with Malena, you had Monica Bellucci and the kids. I don't really know, and the other established actors as well. But with Shoeshine, you didn't. There were some peculiarities. Did any of you notice that? I want.
Is it because they're not actually real actors, or they're just the common people who are
Not
just...
real, they acted in the film.
I'm sorry?
It's not that they're not real actors. They acted in the film. So
No, no. I mean to say, like, they are not the usual actors, the those who were cast in the film. So, is that what you're trying to say? So, is that
no,
why it's a kind of peculiar acting?
is there anything different that you folks
Mhm.
noticed
Okay.
with the? Uh,
I mean,
yeah,
probably the lack of polish right? Because they're not professional actors.
Yeah, thank you.
No,
So that was one more aspect that I wanted to highlight. The movement thrived on non-professional actors, and it sort of moved to who's the guy who directed 120 Days? Getting badly, but the director of Arabian Nights, 120 Days of Sodomy, Sailor.
is it Pasolini?
Yeah, thank you. So it
I found it.
went on, the trend carried on to Pasolini as well. So you had this trend of using non-professional actors, but using high, I mean, at least with the later years, using high production budget. I mean, production elements. I'm sorry. So you had very good sound editing with some of Pasolini's films, which may not be the case with the earlier films. So that is one characteristic. Any other characteristics that you noticed? And I think we have a new entrant here.
Can I?
Vishwa, hi.
Hi.
Hi. Do you want to share a quick thought on your initial reaction of the film? And Happy New Year, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Happy New Year. I think I enjoyed the film. I thought it was very, able to capture that moment in history. And like you said, it's a very historic moment because Italy had just surrendered, and based on the newsreels, it seemed like Japan hadn't fully surrendered yet. So like a very interesting point in World War II, where people are still grappling with the post, like the end of the war in Italy. And just like seeing the impact not on the adults but on the children is actually a really interesting perspective. Yeah, I think overall just very sad, with which is like the reality of neorealism. But I enjoy that kind of genre.
That's true. That's fair.
Can I make a point?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned of the actors, like how very different from people acting in 70s or 80s. And it's my personal opinion, but I think the acting there would be more about survival per se. An actor acting would be in 90s, for example. I don't know, the Breakfast Club, for example, in the 80s. They are more about they're more about high school, they're more about college, they're more about friends and sex and everything else. But seeing right now, they more of a survival. They want to feed their family, or they want to just have a horse. It's just simple. They just have small steps, small ideas, small aspirations. They're not planning to build a company, or they're not planning to go fly around the world. They just want to do one small thing. They just want to buy a horse. They have the money for the horse. They need some more. It's not an impossible task. It's just if this deal hadn't come up, they would have worked for 1 month, 2 months. Who knows?
True.
Just small stuff. And this is different from, I don't know, even the films which happen these days. They are more about having big dreams, high hopes. How our ambitions get you through anything. Having hope and faith can win you anything. That doesn't happen. It's just like you have small ideas, work on that first, then go for next. Like they didn't have what to do after they bought a horse. They just wanted to buy a horse. They want to ride the horse. What will do with the horse? Like they could use it to carry their goods. They could use it to not do anything with the horse actually. But they didn't think of that. They just wanted to ride a horse. They wanted to buy a horse firstly. And that is, I don't know, that's something new. I don't see it often these days. I don't see it in films. I don't see it with my friends. These are just some new things you see.
True. Remember how I mentioned the director was ideologically a communist. So most of his ideas were derived on how the certain class dynamics and there is a threshold of normal living. I mean, in air quotes, normal living that is set in the society where you really need to uh, hit a couple of check boxes just so you are considered within the range of normal. So it comes out in very different, there are very different elements for different families. So one of the elements which showed that the boys were in some sense well off and not really having a hard life or a bad life was buying a horse, because they didn't really know what to do with it, but they wanted it because they might have seen someone own it. So the sense of ownership, which is uh, uh, you know made to seem like uh, something that should be uh, something of a mandation, just so uh, you don't seem like you're leading a shitty life. So I think we have essentially covered the primary points of uh, uh, you know the movement, and uh, this might probably aid some of you in some way to notice a couple of elements whilst you watch these films, and probably also notice how these films influenced other film movements in different countries, even like India. So,
Okay, so I want to talk
give
about
me a
some
minute.
element in the film. Hello, Nikhil, are you two up to something?
Yeah. So, um, children were a significant role. I mean, played a very significant role in this film. Likewise, with a lot of other films, which uh, you know uh, were significant, were considered important and classics, at least in the perspective of film movements, also had children in the main role. Do you have any thoughts on why this might be the case? Because you have Pather Panchali again from India, you have uh, Barren Lives from Brazil, and Bicycle Thieves, which is also considered a classic from uh, Italy. It also featured a child, and from Canada um, Gata Shraddha, and you have not Deepa, but I mean, I think you get the idea. And I have a really poor memory with recollecting films, but you get the idea. So, why do you think children have this pivotal role of portraying the atrocities of the environment they're in? Why do you think
I
that is
think
a responsibility?
I think it's mostly because children are considered to be innocent. They do not have any biases, and it is very unbiased view point of view to showcase anything. And children are also gullible, so everything sometimes have a more profound impact. Like if an adult gets conned, you think, oh, he was a stupid idiot. He should have had some basic, idea. But when a child is conned, you feel, oh my God, yeah, he took advantage of an innocent child. How dare he, did that thing? What type of horrible person he is, you know? I think that plays a very big role. Connecting with kids is very easy. I mean, obviously, if the kid is a very good uh, in acting, is
Mhm.
very talented artist, then it becomes very easy to connect with kid. And watching things from the kid's point of view also means that everything would be mostly in a very simple language and not really as complex as it would be from watching from an adult's point of view, right? Like for example, they said that kid wanted to buy the horse. Why he wanted to buy the horse? He had no idea. He just wanted to buy the horse. Maybe he loved enjoying, he loved riding the horse, right? So that was probably the reason. Or maybe he was like, oh, still we do not buy the horse, he would rent it out to anyone, he would allow anyone to sit on it. So maybe the kid was attached to that particular horse and he didn't wanted anyone else to ride the horse. These are very simple reasons. But if an adult wants to buy the horse, it would mostly because he is going to utilize the horse or exploit the horse in a particular way, correct? I mean, that is one of the reasons. For with kids, it's mostly very I wouldn't say idealistic, but very naive perspective on almost everything. And that is something that we all crave to have, right? A naive perspective, a non-biased perspective, it also becomes very easy to connect with that thing. And again, like, there's a saying, right, कि बच्चे भगवान का रूप होता है. Gods are children are like God's uh, incarnation. God speaks to child. So I think that might be a reason why kids are often used so effectively, and they actually have a very good, very high effect on normal audience. But that's just my opinion. I might be wrong. So yeah, you guys can share your opinion on this.
Incidentally, these actors are not really professional actors as well, so that in some sense adds to your point of humans being psychologically empathetic to and readily open to uh, uh, being angered by any sort of atrocities on these children. So yes, please go ahead. How about the others? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I have an idea, just a small
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
When the kids buy the horse,
Mm-hmm.
like they ride around the streets. When the other children see them, and they awe them for a while, and then they just get back to the work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this one it's not exactly showing you indifference, but showing that you have respect for a child. You have respect more or less than the indifference. But say if an adult or someone had bought a horse and had done ride around the streets, that would be a different story. We would have interest of awe, we would have jealousy. But just the children, you just saw them, they were in awe, they respected the child. Even in the courtroom scene, when all the
Mm-hmm.
children are queued up for they listen into whatever the defense and prosecution are talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Even then, one of the children remarks, I would like to have a horse.
Mm-hmm.
What reason? I mean, I just like to have a horse. Mm. There's no innate, there's no like social respect, or nothing attached to that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, no, I'm not going to say new or anything, but it's just a thing which you don't notice in, I don't know, a serious film, or even in a jailbreak film, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. This is a more of a children's point of view, and this is what separates children's view from adult view, if you can say it, or
Mm-hmm.
even teenagers' view. And that is another story.
That's fair enough. I mean, these kids were approaching teenage in some sense, or they were on the verge of adolescence. They seemed so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that can be thought of because they didn't look to me more than 8 or 10. They didn't look me that
Mm-hmm.
age. They were way, they were pre-adult, they were pre-adolescents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it.
Ah,
That's it. Continue.
thank
I had a thought. I
Mhm.
think with like psychology, people are talking about how as we grow older, we want to heal the inner child within us, the one that was hurt throughout. And
Mhm.
I can imagine how in these kind of periods where they're trying to showcase the hurt that everyone's feeling through cinema, the
Mhm.
child is the adults watching and trying to
Mhm.
protect them, right? So it's easy to project all their pain, all their hurt, their past problems onto this child when the character is a child, they can project their own inner
Mhm.
child onto them.
Mhm. So,
So
do you
I,
think
I
a bit
yeah,
more?
I think that's what it makes sense to
Yeah,
have
go
child
ahead. Go, go.
protagonists that way.
No, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, that was it.
Okay. So, do you think? I mean, a follow-up question or a follow-up thought. I mean, so do you folks think it's a bit more challenging to use adult protagonists to portray probably elements of innocence in quite a similar way? I mean, would it be easy to empathize with them as easy it is to empathize with children in cinema?
I mean,
I think
personally, definitely, because a child is like a blank slate. You can kind of
Hmm.
you can portray anything onto a child. You can kind of put your own backstory into that child, whereas like an adult
Hmm.
character comes with a lot more baggage. Where did they grow
True.
up? What is their economic status? What is like their family background? What is their job? What do they do? Why did they pick their career? Right?
Mm. That's
yeah,
fair
I
enough.
was I was just about to say the same thing. Like,
Hmm.
it all depends on the writing. For a kid, most of the things. I mean, yeah, you can also show a kid a brat, uh, very smart who has no innocence left in it. You can also do that with a kid. But
Hmm.
usually, because the perception, the I would say the more popular perception has always been that the kids are usually innocent and they need to be sheltered. So when you are trying to have a protagonist who is innocent,
Hmm.
using a kid comes a natural choice. But then again, working with kid could be hard because there are few things that sometimes you are unable to explain to kid and get extracted out of kid. But it's not like that you cannot get the innocence out of an adult character also, right? For
Hmm.
example, I think we all have seen Aparichit. I do Onion, right? That's the correct name. I've seen it in Hindi, so it's Aparichit. So his character was very innocent in a way, though they later on showed with
Are you
personality and
speaking
everything.
of Aparajito? It's a Bengali film.
Aniyan, Tamil film.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay.
The
Mhm.
Aprachit the
one with
stranger.
Kenny, one with Kenny.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, so it becomes very easy, right, to connect with him also. So
Hmm.
it has a lot to do with the writing, scripting, and obviously, like Vishwa said, that in most cases, how will you write? You would give it with, okay, he was raised in so and so environment, he had so and so people who nurtured him in such a particular way, or in
Hmm.
some weird case you can also showcase it in some other way. There's also this very classic example of Salman Khan in Judwa, right? One
Hmm.
who is raised with his father, with his own family in a very upper. He is very, I mean, I won't say innocent, but he looks very innocent. And at the same time, the one who is raised on the streets, he's
Hmm.
like, you would see him and you would not trust him. But that is his playing, that is his acting capabilities as well as the writing, which makes it easier. For one Salman, you can see the one character of Salman is innocent, and one character is like street smart thug, and you cannot con him, right? So
Hmm.
writing has a lot to do with it. It just becomes easier with kids because of the popular perception that kids are usually innocent, and it's not even. I mean, I would say that 60-70% of the times kids are actually innocent. But yeah, sometimes because of hardships or some nature, kids usually achieve maturity at a very young age. But that is very rare, and they never. I mean, in this movie also, the kids were actually innocent, right? Before they
Yeah.
get pulled into that scheme
True.
and the jail life. So they were actually innocent. But this is actually the perfect thing. It is talking about that one particular exception, that not each and everyone is lucky, right? Because over here, you can say a lot of things, but mostly it was that, okay, he one of the schemers, he said that, oh, my brother's friend, he is a good guy, we can make him the fallout guy and we can run away and then we can again use it. Like they already have used another guy, which we had shown in
Hmm.
the movie, right? There was also another guy they had previously used, and that other and then the main schemer, he also says that we should send them some goods so that they have a very good experience, so that we can again use them as a fallout guy the next time also. So that was a big thing. But at the end of the day, I honestly believe that it has to do a lot with the writing, and that
Hmm.
is a headache that basically a screenwriter will have to go through if they want to show an innocent character as an actor. So that is just my thing, right?
Okay. So, since there is a lot of accolade for the writer, I wanted to mention his name because I mean, one of the writers, because he was pretty influential for Vittorio De Sica, particularly in his career because he went on to write a lot of other brilliant films with him. And additionally, he was a film theorist as well. So his name is Cesare Zaventini, and you guys can look up some of his bibliography in case you're interested to get a much deeper view on uh, the film period he was in. But he has also worked with some of the greats, Michelangelo Antonioni, Federico Fellini, and Rossellini, and Visconti. So he's a pretty big deal in his time. I just wanted to, mention this one. Can probably share the Wikipedia page on the group, so you can probably go ahead and take a look at it.
So I have adding on to the previous question that you asked about why children are portrayed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please go ahead.
So there was one thing which I feel there is a strong necessity to portray children as the protagonists. So I think, and also especially for this particular movie, so whatever happens in the society, be it the class struggles or anything, the war or anything, so it is directly impacted to the onto the children, right? For example, whenever something happens and the people are displaced, like it directly impacts the children. So they wouldn't know, they wouldn't have seen the world at all. As Kaivalya mentioned, they're pretty like they're innocent, and
Naive,
also
naive.
yeah, naive. They wouldn't know what to do, and they'll be in their own world of enjoyment and doing whatever they want to do. But they've in this movie, since they are children of working class people, they're forced to work, and they're forced to earn money, and they're forced to know a world in a view the world in a different viewpoint. And I think that's one important thing why children are used as protagonists. So yeah, that was it.
That's a very fair point. I mean, fair point from everyone because you guys covered very different elements on why a child would be a much would have a very strong pivotal role portraying a certain period of certain period of history. Additionally, poverty, for example, poverty hits a rich child a different. Doesn't really hit a rich child, but poverty hits a poor child differently, and war hits a poor child differently, and the after effects of war is different on the economic class they fall into.
True.
So,
I would like to add something to
sorry.
this. As children are also very much less ignorant about cruel realities of the world. That could also be reason why they are
True,
more.
absolutely,
Uh,
absolutely. So, time and time again, it seems like directors know what really, makes their heart, it pulls their heartstrings. So, funnily, recently I watched Aapka Sarur. So, it also has a, similar element of, it's just a sequence, but it has a similar element of using the child as, to gain the audience sympathy. So, I think we're sort of closing in on the conclusion of the discussion, but I wanted to make one additional point on something, one element that has influenced the broad spectrum of Italian filmmakers. So, and that is psychoanalysis. So, if there are psychoanalysts or anyone who's majoring or minoring in psychology, they might know much better. But they might be able to notice these aspects much better. But I think my first acquaintance with the utilization of psychoanalysis in or its interpretation of dreams. It wasn't wordplay, but uh, it's take on dreams. Because, I first noticed it in Wild Strawberry, which was also one of the films that was curated a few months ago. So you have a set of events that happen, but they don't really mean anything directly. I mean, unless they're psychoanalysts, it won't really mean anything directly. But you have a much natural portrayal of dreams, and that is sort of carried down to a lot of. That has sort of influenced plenty of filmmakers down the line. Very recently, I saw The Sopranos, HBO television show. Very recently, as in 2 years ago, which sort of carried the psychoanalytic view of dreams. I think in your experience, you might come across psychoanalysis in films much more prominently. I'm not really too acquainted with psychoanalysis to, gauge very strong nuances, but things which are very apparent, I can probably notice. So, any in your collective experience? Anything
I don't know
related
if
to dreams? Go
I was
ahead.
gonna say I don't know. I don't know if I understand the question fully.
It's not really a question. It was an observation that that I made, particularly with regard to the neorealist movement. But it was something that was quite common to a lot of other filmmakers across Europe. And this probably, in a sense, shows an Eastern-Western divide because you have a lot of characters develop out of these psychoanalytic theories, but on the Eastern end, you don't really have the strong influence of Freud over there. So I came to notice the interpretation psychoanalysis gives on dreams in Wild Strawberries. So were there any similar films that you came to notice psychoanalysis? Because I'm not really well versed with it, so things which, if the film is very apparent with the utilization, I can probably notice. If not, I'll definitely miss it.
Hello?
Should I be more concise?
Hello? I'm audible? Am I audible?
No, very faintly.
Oh,
I'm audible?
Still faintly.
Now?
Better, but can you try a bit more?
Now?
Yeah, much better.
Yeah. I'm not sure of films per se,
Mhm.
but if I think most of you have seen Star Wars,
Mhm.
so when a Grand Admiral Thrawn does remind me of that.
I don't really know Star Wars, so I won't really get the anyway.
Yeah.
But okay.
Grand Admiral Thrawn. You can watch it.
Oh, sure. It's a series, so it's a huge commitment for me. But yeah, please go ahead. Go ahead.
it's a very deep cut into the Star Wars world.
Okay.
But he's a great psychoanalyst and commander of armies and specific race within the Star Wars world. That's
Okay.
the pretext.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. So it probably goes on to further the point that there is a strong influence on the western end of the hemisphere. So I think we can probably reach a conclusion on the discussion, unless there are any additional points the you folks want to make?
I don't know if you guys discussed how kind of like the whole movement of like neorealism in Italian cinema had a long-term impact on parallel cinema in India.
Of
I
course.
think
I'm
that's
so sorry.
fascinating.
Sorry. Of course. Would you like to start by making some comments?
I mean, I just more recently got into parallel cinema in India, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm obsessed with kind of the work of Shyam Benegal, and honestly,
Mm-hmm.
I like his work a lot more than Satyajit Ray, even though I know they're both influenced each other very heavily.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there is a deep lack in Indian cinema of this kind of portraying the reality on the ground of low income and middle income folks, and um, that section of cinema, I think, in Indian cinema is probably some of the best that ever came out of India.
True. I think in the recent times, I can't really recall films that specifically were hard hitting, except for John and Jane by Ashim Ahluwalia. I think, yeah, John and Jane, and at least not in the 2000s that were as significant and were as impactful as Ray and Benegal and Ritwik Ghatak and Mrinal Sen. If you haven't started with Mrinal Sen, I mean, this is another tangential point, but if you haven't started with Mrinal Sen, you should definitely start with the Calcutta trilogy.
I'm trying to find a copy of the movies. I'm having a hard time.
Oh, I can share the films on. I can share the films with you. You don't have to worry.
Okay, I'll
Yeah.
follow up.
Yeah. So,
Speaking of Mrinal Sen, I have hello.
yeah, go ahead.
Speaking of Mrinal Sen, I happened to see this recent movie by her. It's called. Have you seen Achanak Ek Din?
Achanak Ek Din, yeah, Mrinal Sen, yes.
Yeah. It's a very beautifully portrayed film.
Absolutely. I
Mm.
mean, when I started out with Mrinal Sen, I actually watched the interview first, so I was not really impressed because he mostly dwelt with symbolisms and far away metaphors, which didn't really drive the story home. It seemed like a parody, but it wasn't really funny in that sense. But
Actually,
with
what Achanak Ek Din showed na, it
Mhm.
exists in everybody's family.
True, absolutely. I think the summary of all Brynel Sen's films is that it exists in some fashion, in some degree, in everyone's family. Absolutely. So, Vispa, you were talking about your fascination with something. Would you like to elaborate on that and why you think Benegal, in some sense, feels more to you than Satyajit Ray?
For me personally, I think one of like women in general in India as a society, but also in film, are
Mm-hmm.
forgotten as part of like protagonists and characters and problems of women. So
Mm-hmm.
even within like neo-realism and parallel cinema, a lot of it focuses on the problems of men and boys. So for
Mm-hmm.
me, I'm drawn to Shyam Benegal because of his focus on women and like the problems that they face.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Speaking of that, if you have seen Satyajit Ray's Charulata,
Mm-hmm.
it is also a beautiful take on how woman independence and those things.
Absolutely. I think when the parallel cinema particularly started out, and there is a stark distinction between parallel cinema and Indian New Wave. But when parallel cinema started out with Satyajit Ray, Ritwik Ghatak, Mrinal Sen, Shyam Benegal, and Guru Dutt, so you had this tendency of the filmmakers to portray the forgotten gender or the forgotten class or the or children particularly, or in some sense, and also make documentaries on issues that are not really in the mainstream for the Indian citizens. So I mean, Charulata is a brilliant example, of course. Additionally, you have as you take a look at the Indian New Wave, you have Dvipa, you have Rat Trap by Adur Gopal Krishnan. You have Ammarian by John Abraham. So you have once the cinema started, I think in the 60s, if I'm not wrong. 60s, I think Ray came into prominence in the 60s, Ray and Ghatak, if I'm not wrong. So past the 60s, you had a symbiotic relationship where, particularly with India, where the neorealists influenced Indian filmmakers, and Indian filmmakers influenced, in some sense, not they might not be as prominent as the neorealist movement influence on the Indian filmmakers, but they were pretty important for them. I think Martin Scorsese is a pretty outspoken director regarding Pathar Panchali's influence on his filmmaking, but there were pretty many directors who, held Ray and Ghatak as significant and prominent characters, and had great influence from them. And moving slightly east, you had, I mean, if you look at the West and the East, particularly in terms of filmmaking, you have a sense of universal styles with the West. I mean, this is purely discounting Africa because they have a style of their own. But in the East, you have India take a very different approach to filmmaking, whereas countries a bit as you traverse toward the eastern part of India, you have a different filmmaking style. You have Taiwanese, you have Thai, you have Chinese, Japanese, which really didn't have a different style and different philosophy with how they make films. So you with at least with the advent of the Taiwanese film movement, you had the cameras quite detached from the characters. You didn't really have it move around with them, and that moving away from what we were talking about, the neorealist influences on the Taiwanese filmmaking, you had that imported mostly from the Japanese style of filmmaking. You had Tashigara, you had Kurosawa and Ozu being very prominent influences on the Taiwanese filmmakers, particularly Hao Shen and the person who made The Woman, Kwame, and Edward Yang, and Tsai Ming-ling was a second generation Taiwanese filmmaker. I mean, considering the film movement, but they had a strong influence from the Japanese. And I think, speaking of the Japanese film movements, not one but several film movements is a topic for a different conversation altogether. But I'm sorry. Would you guys want to add anything to? Did I put you guys to sleep?
I think you cut out at the end of
No,
when you were
we are
talking about the
really
Japanese.
awake.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So, would you like to? Where did I cut out on?
Yeah, you said that the Japanese film movements are something for a different discussion, and then it kind of cut out after that.
Okay, so I mean that was essentially the end of it. So that was a bit tangential because it didn't really speak about Italian neorealism, but again with the Japanese film,
आइए आइए
again with the Japanese filmmakers and the Italian filmmakers, they had
जा रहा है क्या
a sense of symbiosis. Sorry.
घर हाँ पापा तो है नहीं गाड़ी
So, likewise, they had a symbiotic relationship of that sort. So, would you guys want to add some thoughts on that, or anything that jumped your mind whilst I was talking? Or we can revert back to talking about what you think are some of the influences you could notice in Indian cinema from Italy and the neorealist movement in Italy.
I was gonna mention real quick. The only one that I'm familiar with is the impact of bicycle thieves on the movie Do Bega Zamin.
Okay.
I'm obsessed with that movie. The final scene with the chariot kind of was so intense for a movie from that time period. I feel like most movies from like even the black and white era have a hard time building tension just with the limitations of technology.
True.
And I think they did an amazing job of kind of portraying the reality of someone struggling to find some money in India post-independence, and build that tension throughout. Another movie with a great child actor.
True, absolutely.
Hello?
Syed Akhtar Mitra. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not so much about the neonism movement and everything. Never watched many films on the topic.
That's fine. I mean, these were that was the point of the exercise that we tried out. The listing out characteristics that were prominent in the film, which in some sense is universal to neorealism.
Yeah.
So if you can just jog your memory.
Yeah, I think I can. I'm not sure neonism, but I can tell a bit of symbolism. The Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. If anyone has read.
No, could you repeat the name?
Norwegian Wood. I type it on here.
I still did not get that. Could you repeat the name?
I'm typing it on.
I don't think I'll get it. Can you type the name of the film? It might be much more helpful.
It's a book. It reminds me of a book. Okay. I was saying, okay, a part of the storyline, somewhere in the middle, if I'm not mistaken, the protagonist stays for time in the library. He's confronted with a larger symbols such as classical music, or even how the paintings in the library, for example, the surroundings in the city, the town he lives. That's for a short time. It's a long time in the book, but in the character's life, it's only a short, brief time.
Okay.
And that I think some sort of a symbolism, like the person alluding to something, and most of those references were a bit to the a classical music. For example, classical music here they utilized or compositions by Bach or something, someone like Wagner, Bach. So that is a symbolism which I can relate to. And that is again that's also something in Japan in the 60s. Japan which has just come was receiving help from the United States to help stabilize this economy. 60s. So they set on that time and had that much impact. By the influence of Americans or Europeans or by influence, they had such as classical music, European classical music, or even paintings such as paintings by Dutch or I think Dutch artists or something like that. That is like a small thing which I noticed in that book. Thought be relevant here, so I mentioned it.
That's actually an interesting point because symbolism, in some sense, were prominent in film movements. I'm not sure if it was, I mean, prominent in neorealism, but it was, I mean, at least not in the period which was considered pure neorealism. I mean, eventually it caught on because there were a lot of, mythical that were made within the boundary of this moment. So
Let's start with relevant here.
yeah,
It's
that
symbolism and all is something which is
that's
discussion going on, right? I have to
sorry.
remember that and not getting it out.
Oh, okay, that's a very interesting point. And, if I'm correct, I'm not entirely sure if this is true, but symbolism is a prominent part again of psychoanalysis. So I'm not sure which complex they call it, but uh, it's a uh, no, not a Freudian complex. It's a complex of some sort. I can't really recall the name. It's based on a story, a Greek story, where the son kills the father and marries the mother.
Oedipus complex.
Yes, thank you. Oedipus complex. So there was, I mean, one of the reasons psychoanalysis is considered pseudoscience is particularly because of its multidisciplinary influence on the theory. I mean, influences it takes to construct the theory. So that's an interesting point. Thank you. And anyone else wants to comment on what they think are neorealist influences on Indian cinema or any other film industry. Okay. So I think we can probably close the discussion with some concluding remarks. If was there anything in the film that you think should have been done differently? I mean, regardless of it being a masterpiece and a classic of held in high regard, did you feel that there should have been something done differently, which would have impacted the film in a much different way, a much stronger way? Or did you find the film to be completely perfect?
I think I don't understand the creative choice, but I felt
Mhm.
some of the music was a little zany for the subject matter.
True. I think that was probably a play on the. It was a parodical play on. It sort of usually happens with a lot of other De Sica films as well. There was a film on gambling, and it was pretty much influenced from his own lifestyle and how gambling ruins the family, and it carries the same tone of music.
Yeah, and I think like the ending climax or the
Mhm.
last few seconds,
Mhm.
when Giuseppe is killed, like how what's his name, Maggie?
Maggie.
Kid, yeah, the other kid, like how that is more of a reminiscence of a Greek tragedy. Like at the end,
Mhm.
if lovers kill each other, the
Mhm.
other one is like, no, I give up, I surrender or something like that.
Mhm.
Like in a full anguish, I give up, I surrender, kind of, that like face. That I feel is way too much used. Or I don't know if it's
Mhm.
the first time it's being used here or it's used earlier before
Mhm.
1946 film.
Mhm.
But yeah, these days or I mean, if you see these films, I feel a bit overused.
Mhm.
Mm.
I mean, the films made in recent times you're speaking of.
Yeah, I mean, not exactly. I mean, anytime is fine. I mean, the climax or like how the protagonist express grief.
Okay.
Say in the end, like the Maggie just
Mhm.
says, I've done it. Okay, like it doesn't try to like, the entire story is being of survival. They
Mm-hmm.
want to survive. They want to buy a horse. No,
Mm-hmm.
but firstly they want to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy just says at the end, no, everything is done, everything is lost. I give up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the point of building for around 1.5 hour entire film to
Mm-hmm.
end it in such a Greek tragedy in style? Hmm?
Probably we can in some time contact this and find this.
I mean, that's my only thing, but that's what I think. That's
But
that's
isn't
just
isn't
me, my
that
opinion, guys.
partially the appeal of neo-realism of like, telling stories without happy endings, and
Yeah.
just like being like, this is just how it is right now, and there aren't many happy endings.
Man, but doesn't mean I have to like, just give up on whatever you've done till now. Like, I know you have committed a crime or such, but it should be like you have worked hard for something. You worked hard to escape from a place. Mm. And you just don't throw it away. You just don't, you express your grief or something later, but you just don't, just say, I give up, I'm done with everything, and just go back quietly into your old life or your present life or anything like that. If your present
Mhm.
sentence will be much more longer now. That was 2 years
So
ago.
you felt the film was of shorter length, and if it was much longer, it could have
No, no,
developed the characters much more
no, no,
prominently.
no, 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 that's fine. I just wanted the ending to be, you could just run away. Like the
Ah,
horse
okay.
goes away at the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
The horse just slowly walks away to, wherever it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Just like that, you can, the main character, what was his name again? I forget. Yeah,
Just that. Mm-hmm.
yeah, you can, that person can, after killing, can just, contemplate for a while and, at least try. Give yourself an
Mm-hmm.
effort to go and, mhm. That guy doesn't do anything. That's what I feel. I know it's my first time here. I'm not sure if this like a thing which should be expected in, these kinds of tragedy films and anything, but that's
Mm-hmm.
what I feel.
I mean, that's fine. That's fine. If it's your first time, you might probably get used to sad endings as you watch the films in the curation, because you don't really have happy endings with most of the films curated from the 75 to 80 films that were curated so far. I think only a selected handful had happy endings. So, in some sense, I think eventually you'll get used to sad endings, and that's an additional excellent point about Greek tragedy. But I'm not. I don't really have any additional points to make about Greek dramas because I don't really know them well. But if any of you are familiar with Greek plays, you can probably make a comment.
I don't know much about Greek drama, but I mean, I kind of feel I don't think it's like wrong to expect a happy
Mm-hmm.
ending. I think, at least for me personally, after a story like that, a happy
Mm-hmm.
ending kind of just feels corny, and that not a lot of directors are able to pull it off successfully while
Mm-hmm.
still maintaining the tone of the remaining film. I think a good
Mm-hmm.
director to look at for being able to pull that off is probably Akira Kurosawa,
Mm-hmm.
as well
Basquiat,
as Hayao Miyazaki.
oh, of course, of course.
They struggle with the content, but at the end are able to give you like an uplifting note at the end.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And additionally, Abbas Kiarostami and Mohsen Makhmalbaf are also excellent filmmakers in that regard. Uh, they mostly work with children, and there are only a few films that, I mean, not Makhmalbaf, but Abbas Kiarostami. He mostly works with children, and it's only a few rare cases that he has had adult protagonists. I think Certified Copy is one of them. And most of them have a neutral ending. You don't really have a happy or a sad ending, but a neutral ending. And it's up to you to feel happy or sad regarding what happens. So, Where is My Friend's House is one of the films that is on the list this month. So, if you're interested with happy endings or a neutral ending of some sort, I think that would be the best film to go.
As well as the taste of cherry, na? Taste of cherry doesn't
Taste of
exist.
Cherry, yes. Taste of Cherry, yes. Taste of Cherry, yes. Again, a neutral ending. so you don't really
Yeah, doesn't
have
have a
any
happy
direction.
ending. Yeah,
Sorry.
doesn't have a ending. Just a cherry doesn't have a happy ending, no?
It has a neutral ending. It has an open ending. You don't really,
Okay,
you're not really
okay,
let
yeah,
that,
yeah.
you know.
Okay, you were speaking of Greek plays, na? Not Greek movies, na? Plays.
Um, I didn't really understand the question.
A few minutes ago, you were discussing if you guys are aware about some Greek plays.
Yeah, Greek plays. Yeah, not Greek films, but Greek plays. Yes.
Yeah, so this is one Oedipus Rex, which doesn't have a happy ending.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tragedy, in fact. You
Mm-hmm.
guys aware about it? Oedipus Rex?
That's the story that we briefly mentioned on how the son kills the father and marries the mother.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
I think that is in some sense, uh, you know, um, uh, been reflected itself on a lot of films, not if not directly, indirectly. One of the films that I can recall is the Funeral Parade of Roses by um, okay, Funeral Parade of Roses. I think you can get the name of the director. He's a surrealist filmmaker. I can't recall the name. He also made Demon Shura. So, if there are if there are no more concluding comments, I think we can close the discussion. And Varun, you can probably end the live stream once it's over.
I'm sorry. Hello.
If there are no more concluding comments, I think we can
Yeah, sure.
end the stream. Hmm?
Yeah.
I think it is one thing that I would like to conclude is that how
Sure.
scary it is that uh, our prison system is literally the same that was in 1947. I
Hmm.
think that was one of the most very concerning thing in my opinion, right? Like the
Hmm.
amount of under trials and thing, but like we we do not talk about that a lot of the times in in popular news media or anywhere. So
Sure.
I think that is something that is very concerning to me. And this movie is again like a very good, I mean, in
Commentary.
1947 it was same situation. We are still in the same situation. We are still, in a way, at least our legal system is still stuck in 1947.
Hmm.
So that was like one of the biggest takeaway from the movie. And
Hmm.
I think it is worth a mention over here that we have so
Absolutely.
much work to do. At least, you know the laws are archaic, this and that, but at least we are so understaffed, right? The most cases, and in most cases it is at the district level, or sometimes even the district courts do not have enough judges right now. So this is really concerning thing in my opinion. There are so many things that could be solved in a matter of days, or 2 days, like, and
Hmm.
it takes years and years and years and keeps on dragging. And it's shown over here also, right? That same guy, he's saying like, oh, so many kids, they haven't gotten a trial for 3 months, 4 months. I think in
Hmm.
today's day and age, at least in India, it is worse than what it was in 1947 in Italy. So that is very concerning in my opinion, and I think that is what to be mentioned in this concluding moments, in my opinion.
Sure. And if you can find the time, you can probably share a couple of articles related to the prison system and the under trials you were talking about in the
Yeah, yeah. I
uh,
think I think there is a very good movie on it is available on YouTube for free. Uh,
okay.
the official distributor, I think Pen. It is on Pen Media's channel. Uh, I would share it. Or there is also Caddy Band, which was again produced by Yash Raj. So that was a
Mhm.
different. It was also again based on the kids who are waiting for their trials, but they are not getting, and then they do some. It was like that. So there are a few movies over there, but there is a lack of awareness about it. And quite frankly, it was after that one of my friend is part of Caddy Bank. So from him, I got to know about the under trial situation, how bad it is, and really, because they do a lot of research while making movie. It's a different thing that most of the research, which is very grim and gritty, do not make it into a popular movie because you cannot show much disturbing thing to a mass, catering to a large mass because if it is a too much disturbing, it is bad
It's
for business.
off-putting. Mhm.
Yeah, so that is the thing. But he knew a lot of thing and he shared with me. I'm not sure there are much articles about it. I'm not sure. I didn't even search for it. Like it was so depressing for me to even just listen to it. And then he told me that he was himself had seen that movie. They actually told him to watch that movie if you want to get a glimpse of it, like how the thing is about under trial. And so that is something that you can watch. I will just find the movie and I would just share it on the group.
Sure. If there are articles, you can share it on the off-topic group, just so they have a much freer space to have a decent conversation. So I think we can probably close the discussion at this point. Why don't you can end the stream?
Yes.